Begin with you, Perry, who's so close to me here. What is your assessment of what seems to be a political crisis that is emerging in the region? What you see going on in Kenya, in South Sudan, in Rwanda, I mean also in Burundi, but also in Tanzania, we're beginning to hear of calls for amending the constitution to lengthen the presidential term from 5 to 7 years. Your take, Perry.
Thank you, Patrick. I think one of the things we are seeing is failure by leaders to follow the rules that have been agreed upon in their constitutions. Because if you look at Uganda right now, we are debating amending Article 102B before it is tested. In Kenya right now, there is actually a crisis because I think the principles of democracy are actually being tested in Kenya. Of course, there are implications whenever those principles are tested because we are getting reports that there's almost a slight economic downturn because of the uncertainty. But for me, in a nutshell, it's just leaders refusing to respect the rules of the game. Because if you make a constitution, it provides the certainty that a country needs in terms of when they'll hold elections, how they'll be conducted, and how they'll settle the scores whenever there is a disagreement. So right now we are seeing leaders not wanting to follow the rules, wanting to overstay in power when their constitutions say otherwise, and really citizens resisting. Because what we are seeing in Kenya, what we are seeing in Uganda is just citizens saying, look, this is a social contract. Our constitutions clearly stipulate that power lies with us. So follow the rules so that we move. And it's unfortunate because that lack of certainty affects economies in the region. It affects stability in the region. So for many of us who were young when some of these leaders came into power, many of us are asking, look, but our constitutions are clear. Why do we have to change the rules? These rules have not been tested. And I think for me it's really a test for democracy, particularly in Kenya. In Uganda, we have gone wrong.
Honorable Serwanyi, you know, Kenya's opposition Doyen Raila Odinga says he will not contest in the October 26. What does this mean for Kenya in particular, but in the region, considering that it is our gateway?
Thank you, Patrick. One, when you look at the geopolitics of East Africa, you know, there is a lot of issues in the constitution and constitutionalism and issues in leadership, the three arms of government, that is the legislature, the judiciary and the executive. You find that when you look at Kenya now, they are in a very dangerous situation. But I think the move that Parliament of Kenya did the other day of coming up with a clear constitution that stipulates that when you have two candidates running and one pulls out, obviously the one remaining in the race remains passes unopposed. I think that is something that was good, but my question is this law going to work retrospectively because it was done when the issues are already happening? But if that happens, that would be a very good head-on. But what we are seeing in Kenya is an aftermath of very, very many issues. You know, when you have an election, that is why in the whole world there is no word that they call it a very good election. There are always those small things that happen, administrative errors. I don't want to downpour the judges, what the judges did, but for a stability of a country, you don't play around with the presidential election.
What does that mean for us as Uganda?
Uganda, we survive on Kenya. Politically not, but economically we survive on Kenya. We don't have a border. I mean, what? We are landlocked. We are a landlocked country. All our goods, everything passes through Kenya. The moment Kenya is unstable, everything is going to get disorganized in Uganda, from fuel prices, from food, and when fuel shoots, everything gets destroyed. So Uganda, we have more than, I think, 100% interest in the politics of Kenya. And I really hope that Kenya is going to stabilize very quickly. And maybe my call is far away because my big elder brother Raila Odinga is very far. He may not be watching this, but I think they need to sit and come up with something for the benefit of the majority. You know, at a certain level, you have to look at national interest, and you ignore issues of who is in power, who is doing what, who is running around, for the benefit of the local people, for the benefit of the majority of the Kenyans, and then the neighboring countries, that is Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. I think this is very key at this time. But if we continue running up and down and Kenya is in a mess, we are in trouble as Uganda, definitely.
Professor Tassis Kabwejele, you as a former Minister of General Duties and elder citizen of this country, and perhaps you understand the region than some of us on this table. One would wonder, how did we, as a region, get to here? What has caused the situation that we are in your view?
Well, history. You know, nothing happens without a cause. You know, look at the politics of Kenya, look at the society, look at the players, go to Uganda, come to Uganda here, look at our history. South Sudan you mentioned, look at their history. How long ago did they become independent? How prepared were they to run their own affairs? What is the social chemistry of South Sudan? The ethnicity and so on. So nothing really surprising what is happening in Uganda, what is happening in the region. In fact, to me the solution is the integration. If we were one country, if we were one federated country, we would be better off than we are now. So
are you saying that we have not learned from our own history, Professor Tassis?
No, we learn. Which human being learned from yesterday? If that were the case, we wouldn't have all these disasters. We wouldn't have millions of people killed, you know, in wars. Man has been on earth for many years, but certainly one of the things he hasn't learned is to learn from history. You know, we make mistakes, and but part of it, of course, our society changes.
What are the mistakes, Professor Tassis Kabwejele, of today's Uganda, like now?
Well, you know, we are looking at mistakes. Why don't we look at advances? You see, pessimism...
You just mentioned right here that we make mistakes, and yes, because if you look at the mistakes, then we can remove them, then we can advance better.
No. That is too simplistic. You see, if you do a good thing, something else comes. You don't have to be a Hegelian, the dialectics. When you feed yourself, soon after that you become hungry. You know, that goes on like that. Society is also like that. What is happening in Uganda, what is happening in the region is growth. She talked about democracy. We just 2 days ago, we were in Bushenyi celebrating 55 years of independence. How many of those 55 years, how many of them have been working democracy? Okay? You know, so, wait. So if you say democracy is not succeeding, do you expect it to have succeeded? For example, in Uganda, when you had wasted time up to whatever time. If I say it, 6 people will say, oh, he's only talking about the NRM. But what has happened? Democracy, if you are talking of democracy practice, democratic practice, you can only talk about elections. You cannot talk about people making their votes. And this is the practice. You practice and you improve it.
So Professor Tassis Kabwejele, when you look in the last 55 years, we've had our tumultuous past. We have had a time when somebody declared himself a life president in this country. We have also had a time when young people went to the bush, and then after 5 years they fought, and here they are, and they are running a government. We have also seen people get medals for one purpose, because they picked guns and killed other Ugandans, and now they are getting medals. Some of them are called Grandmaster Topo, Nalubale Dam and all kind of things. Because of that history, are we now not likely to slide back into that kind of chaos, Perry?
You know, that's why I think the preamble of our constitution, which gives the justification for the content of our constitution, had made it clear that we had a history that we needed to learn from. A history that had never seen, we had an exploitative history, a history of tyranny, and the preamble also hoped that we would forge our way forward. You know, so we have lessons, and for many of us, as I said, we were very young when the NRM came into power. So with our constitution, we are certain that we would not repeat the mistakes. But what is happening is people, particularly our leaders, refusing to play by the rules, you know, because the constitution was made with consensus. Right now, we hear and we see a few others saying, no, let's remove this, it's not entrenched, it's something that can be taken away. And the certainty that we had as a nation is actually pegged in our constitution. Now, when you don't have that, you then leave room for other ways of transferring power. And for many of us, we are saying, no, we want a peaceful transfer of power, as was provided for in our constitution. But I just wanted to respond to what Solomon said earlier about Kenya. You know, the Constitutional Court ruling of 2013 is actually what Raila Odinga is hoping takes precedence, because that ruling was very clear that if a candidate withdraws or dies, there will be a new election. And for me, that's why Kenya is a true test of democracy. Do you actually abide by? Let me finish. Do you abide by the principles as is, or do you choose some and leave some? And what are the implications? Because if the courts are saying one thing and you want the rules to be played differently, it causes problems, because then other people will think that it is okay not to play by the rules.
Actually, I pray what is happening in Kenya does not come to Uganda, because
you should have seen those Kenyan protesters with their placards reading, this is Kenya, this is not Uganda.
You know, Patrick, when you're looking at issues,
you know how people, those protesters,
Patrick, when you're looking at
in Nyahururu, who think that we are so down the ladder. And they even put it on their placards,
Patrick,
that they are supposed to be better, they're not supposed to be us.
When you're looking at governance, issues of governance, you're not just looking at elections and electioneering. We are talking about a whole aspect of life, because this is governance. Talking about economics, talking about how you live at home, talking about the daily work that people do, talking about everything and the rule
the separation of powers, which are critical for a functioning state.
You don't just look at one perspective and you say elections, changing the constitution, and the constitutions are always changed.
Not to suit the whims of an individual,
very true, but constitutions
can I
Professor Tassis,
what is undemocratic in Uganda today? Because I happen to have been in the Constituent Assembly.
Very good. We have a delegate.
What is undemocratic now we are talking about? A constitution is amendable.
So because the constitution is amendable, you can always amend it. What is the motive?
No, listen. You can have your motive.
What is the motive?
You can have your translation. Okay? Tell me exactly what is undemocratic about amending a constitution.
The issue is not whether it's democratic or not. What is the motive?
No,
that has not even been tested.
No, to me, start from day one. A constitution provides for its growth. And I happen to have been in the Constituent Assembly. In there is a mechanism for amending. There are clauses which need a referendum. There are those which, and so on and so forth. So
for some reason that because it is amendable, and because it is democratic, so you have, that is the only reason, that's the motive why you're trying to amend it?
You are using the word motive. And you're right. You seem to be right. There is a motive. What is the motive?
I'm asking you.
No, I don't see any motive. I see growth.
So there's no.
Okay. If you think,
how can you start something and you don't have a motive?
No. Okay. You started this program. What was your motive? What is the motive of this program?
to explain the dilemma that we're in.
Okay, now if you want to now to explain the dilemma, let's see whether are we testing democracy, are we trying democracy, or are we not? When is the democracy democracy? When it doesn't agree with you, that's not democracy. When you don't agree with the procedures, that's not democracy. For example, in Kenya,
do you find, Professor Tassis Kabweje, do you find the question of the motive for the proponents of amending the constitution as uncalled for somebody to ask for that?
If you are right, keep right. Leave me alone on this one. If you think there is a motive, and I must have a motive as you want it, define it, tell me, what is the motive? Because you see, this simplicity that we tend to think about, Uganda now is biology. Biology. We must move from biology to knowledge to ideology. People think now everything is around one man, Museveni. Some people think, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Let's take a break, Professor Tassis Kabweje.
You want to take a break?
Yes, we're going to take a break because when we come back, we'll be joined by another panelist right here. We'll be right back.
Yes.
Pregnancy means different things to different people. What would a pregnancy mean to you now?
In my situation, no. That's why I use a coil. What about you? Jeez, I am not ready. That's why I use pills.
We can't wait.
We are ready to have a baby.
Man, I can't feed another child, so I support my wife to use implants.
What will another pregnancy mean to you now?
My land got finished. That's why I even got a vasectomy.
Trouble. My parents would kill me. That's why I'm abstaining from sex.
I cannot even afford airtime. So, I use condoms.
To prevent unplanned pregnancy, visit a health center to find an option that works for you.
Tomorrow night.
No, what I'm telling you is one, if we collectively come together and we refuse to sign a DC code, let us all come together and refuse.
But you know what? Me, I think we should do a Cyrus or now. See, but we scare her. She will stop forcing us and making us sign that. A Cyrus? What is that?
What is this?
And the flood in my mansion. Oh baby girl, this you me coming out the place me undertaker. Yeah.
Tomorrow night.
Don't miss this week's episode of Coke Studio Africa. Coke Studio Africa. This is where music meets.
Are you in need of being refreshed, beautified, and renewed? Come to Sparkle Salon and be pampered by our team of experienced staff that will leave you feeling rejuvenated. At all Sparkle Salons, we offer professional barber, hairdressing, nails, beauty and wedding services to a cosmopolitan clientele in a comfortable environment using proven products at affordable prices. Just walk into our outlets and you'll be instantly attended to. Our salons are located in major shopping malls with safe, ample parking space for your comfort. At Lugogo Mall, Garden City, Forest Mall, Oasis Mall, and Acacia Mall. Sparkle Salon. Professional, affordable, and quality services.
On the next episode is brought to you by
Turbulent. Let's color.
So what I'm telling you is one, if we collectively come together and we refuse to sign a DC code, let us all come together and refuse.
But you know what? Me, I think we should do a Cyrus or now. See, but we scare her. She will stop forcing us and making us sign that. A Cyrus? What is that?
What is this?
A code of conduct.
Yeah, of course I did sign. But there was nothing in it. She just wants to be in charge, you know?
My rules? Man, I'm going to see Barracks. Who is talking about rules? You're having a meeting with Madame. You said Madame. What does that mean? It means rules. But now, what is wrong with you? Why are you so against the rules, by the way? Huh?
Inspired by the world's most beautiful places, Turbulent has been bringing color to the world since 1907. Turbulent, let's color.
Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guests tonight are Professor Tarsis Kawejiri, Honorable David Pulko, Honorable Solomon Selwanyi, and Perry Artua. And we're looking at what is happening in the East African region, which seems to be a political crisis. If I may bring you, David, in here, because you've just joined us. I remember one time as a reporter, I followed you in the Democratic Republic of Congo when you went to give morale to the Ugandan soldiers that had been deployed in Bunia. And indeed, you did your job to give them morale and all that. You was, at that time, director of External Security Organization. And it appears now, the same place, Beni, Congo, or even Sudan, chaos is back. Are you surprised that we seem to be sliding again in all these kind of conflicts?
Well, it has not fallen just overnight. I'm not surprised, because then you've seen the last few years, even decades, you could see, one, we've lost the battle for democracy at home, okay? And therefore, for us who participated in creating what we thought would be democratic transitions, and therefore they did not have to suffer what we suffered over the years, and we thought we were creating that stability, and therefore they would learn a lot from us. But then we've become the grandfather or grandmother of politics of third term, politics of Parker last. And we are caught up, the people who took up guns to set up, to restore democracy using undemocratic means. That's the irony about our situation. You take up a non-democratic means to restore democracy, and now when you open, after 31 years or so, you open that briefcase. Did they have democracy to give Uganda to begin with?
You are the first beneficiary of this. I hear you. At the youngest age of the 20s, you became a minister.
Actually, that's why now I'm more qualified to say what I'm saying. Because as a young person who was co-opted into invited space, called nowadays affirmative action, it is invited space. To turn the wheel in the same direction, it's moving. Now, when you propose a more transformative leadership agenda, and then you must be pulled down. So your job as young people, like more women in leadership now, but they are just turning the wheel, the direction of those, the authors of this system are. They would not want to innovate, and actually they don't want a system that will now outlive them. They want to outlive the system they established. Now, the rhetoric at that time was different, because now Museveni, even up to now, wants to succeed himself in 2021. Even when the Constitution says at 75, no. So why should an old man like that one eat his own words, swallow his own words? And as though words have no meaning, as though age does not come with wisdom. So now the trust is running very thin. The trust that citizens had of such leaders who change goalposts. Look at what's happening in Kenya.
The leaders you're talking about, like President Museveni, they've got some supporters, people who believe into the agenda. And one of them is a gentleman seated on your left.
He was my lecturer, yes.
By the way, he was your lecturer.
One sitting on my right.
Yes.
Okay, he was a youth at the time, and we discussed with him.
Actually, no, you.
Now, I'm just setting the tone, Chief. Yes. Allow me to, so that you get the direction I'm taking. I'm saying that. No, because I don't have to say what they have said, because they have been heard already. And that's what makes me pull call. Not Kabojere or not Solomon, not... So, what is typical about pull call?
That is true all of
now, which is very important, and therefore don't expect me to just echo what you have said. Expect something different from me. And the point I'm making is that having created room for democratic transitions, whether in Burundi, whether in Congo, whether in South Sudan, now, where are we today? So did that democracy grow? Did it not, or did it grow? Did the systems that were put in place in the region, be it Lusaka Accord, be it Arusha Accord, be it Dar es Salaam Protocol, be it, because these are the things that replaced Pretoria 1, Pretoria 2, those accords that were struck there, Sun City, these, and so forth. They replaced, fortunately, they replaced the Paris Accord, or the London Accord, or the New York Accord. Fortunately, these are homegrown in capitals of Nairobi Accord. So
as well.
Yeah, now that was something positive. We thought actually was now Africa was taking charge. But when you see what's happening now, who can call each other now to order? You tell me kindly. Is it Magufuli, where there's stability? You can see it. Is it Kenya Uhuru? Is it the grandfather of all this in Uganda? Because then, whether it is Kigali or Burundi or Jose in Congo, or Salva Kiir, whom I call bad luck Jonathan, you know, if there was good luck Jonathan, the other side, because they put on the same kofia and the same type of blacks. But this one, unfortunately, I call him bad luck in Juba. So who now has the moral authority to call the other to order? Who is now going to sit all these and bring new dispensation when actually parochial interests, selfish interests, have taken over the stage? And so what I'm saying here, there has been a goal displacement.
Okay.
The guys who set a goal to liberate the countries and bring about democracy and bring about economic development and bring about stability, now that goal, in my view, seems to have been displaced. And now what's at the fore is the survival of the individual, of the family, of the regime, which has taken center stage over all other priorities in the country. There can be no money to buy drugs and so forth, but there will be money to give Solomon to go and consult citizens on what is already predetermined about the third term, about the age limit.
Okay.
So when you look at that, whose priorities? Whose priorities are priorities?
Mr. Kamara, I jotted it about 4 words he said here. Sentence. We lost a war of democracy.
The battle for democracy.
Battle for democracy. The struggle was to restore democracy.
Using undemocratic means. I'm giving it to you.
And my question is, did the struggle in the bush, was it to restore democracy?
Point number one.
Was there democracy? Or to build democracy? You have talked.
I hear you.
Yeah. Was it to restore democracy or to build democracy? Because if there was democracy and it had been lost, I want to know. Because the election, the independence elections we had, 91, 61. The next elections, 62. The next elections, 1980. Now, is that a democracy? So there was no democracy at all, even by the time the Bush war started.
So
that one is for.
There were courts, there were institutions in parliament.
Yeah, but thank you.
And up to today, you are
the DPMP.
Okay.
My uncle was.
And today, Honorable Tassis
please.
We're telling other people to follow institutions around.
Kamara, can you give me room? Yes. Because if the presence of members of parliament is democracy, then we have them. There's no problem. Where the do you have Democrats in Uganda today? Is my brother here, David Procor, a Democrat? Can you talk of Kamara as a Democrat? Democratic values. Democratic institutions are set in the constitution, in the parliament, the judiciary, but what is the content? How do you build a democratic tradition? Now we are talking of the last 30 years of elections which had never been the case before. Whether one likes it or not, whether they are this or that, the RCs soon after 86, RCs as the elections, and on and on and on.
Are you aware that the LOCs we have been there illegally for the last more than 10 years? There have not been elections on the ground.
Please, Kamara, don't be unfair to yourself. Yes, I know that.
So
but you have had elections.
You choose to say the difference.
You had election in '96. You had election in 2001. You had election in 2006. You had election 2011. You had election 2016. These are elections, and there have been elections in districts, in sub-counties. There have been elections. Now you are talking of LOC ones. Yes, and they are being prepared for. And the history of why they never took place is also known. So don't exaggerate. Look, we are looking at facts.
Don't forget very fast, because you're the one who raised it. So the LOCs, and I'm trying to remind you that, are you aware?
Yes,
we went there have been no election.
No, my head is not of a chicken, please.
Nobody said that.
Okay?
I'm not saying that.
Yes, now the LOC elections have not taken place, and they are scheduled now, I understand, for November.
For lack of money.
Okay?
Not on the lack of.
Let's leave it at that. But the democracy. Okay? So he said we'll restore democracy. I'm saying democracy has not been here. We are building it.
It is NRM 10 points.
All right? Yes, but you say 10 point.
Yeah.
If you write down a proposal, you have been an academic.
So
if you write a proposal to get money, to get research grant, does that mean automatically you have research grant?
Chief.
Anyway, let me finish.
And you know your hypothesis, you will go to test which of these was confirmed by results, which one was not, and did not have any significant correlation. And this is what I say.
Anyway.
Okay.
If we are going to, I wanted to add something.
Yes, because
can I give this to panelists?
Yes, but
the young ones also.
Okay, let him conclude his point.
I wasn't born. I didn't stop you from being born when I was born. So relax.
Yeah.
You have your time.
There was no elections about you being born.
Okay. So it's not a fault. It's not a fault that I'm my age. Anyway, the thing is, if we are talking about the working of democracy, you must establish it. And it is not wishes. You don't say, let there be a democracy and it's there. It is the built. Now, we have had now a continuous period of 30 years. Now, have we succeeded in building democracy? If you ask me the answer, as a sociologist, I will tell you, we haven't even started on many things. But if you think in 30 years we should have fully democratic systems, then you are also naive. It's absolutely naive. If you think 30 years is enough to have a full-fledged democracy.
Did we win the battle, or we lost, or we did not lose, we did not win?
You continue fighting a war. If you think what struggle is the sort of struggle continuous.
Okay, gentlemen.
What I know is that democracy is built over a long period of time. Yeah. I remember my brother David here came to university when I was a young man, and that time he was a spy, was very vibrant in the national resistance movement. I was a DP. He pushed me, convinced me, talked all the good issues that were happening in the national resistance movement until I joined NRM. Under the influence of David Procol. He's telling today the same student of his a totally different path. That there is no democracy, there is no the same David who told me there is democracy, the country is moving this, we are progressing to this. And by the way, Patrick, if there was no democracy in Uganda, the President Museveni would just sit and declare himself a life president. We would not have this debate of age limit and what. But I think the fact that members of parliament are going to consult, there was a private members bill. People may accept or may even refuse. We have given people an opportunity, Ugandans, like I'm going to my constituency, to ask the people, and people will give you an answer of a yes or no. That's why you go to them.
Okay, let me bring
and if people give you a no or a yes, that's how you move in.
because you just stated that Honorable David Pulkol convinced you and you joined. It was like inviting you on the ship. If he was a captain, he's now telling you the chief is about to disembark. Are you listening to him now?
I entered he didn't become a prisoner.
No. Okay. Gentlemen, let's give Terry an opportunity.
Gentlemen don't want me to speak. Two things. One, I think, is the commitment seems to be lacking, because the rules are clear that this is the path we should follow. The constitution is clear on what should be done, but the commitment to make sure those rules work is not there. For me, that's one of the things that I see happening in this country, and it's unfortunate, because then for the young people, you then make it seem like your word does not matter, because the constitution was our word, you know. And then when Honorable is saying that they are going to consult, one of the things we have actually been questioning, like, can these consultations be scientific? Because it's just a matter of you calling a few people. We know some of them give money. You call a few people, give them money, and you say you've consulted. If there was a scientific method to this, for instance, establish a constitutional review commission. And those are the two things I'm saying. One is a constitutional review commission, or carry out a national poll in every district, so that the views of the citizens become binding on the MPs. You know, that gives it the ownership. That protects the MPs from some of the backlash that's going on right now.
Isn't it a better proposal, Tassis?
If you think money now is the instrument of compliance, even a review, the reviewers will be bribed if that be the case. The moment you have lost faith in human beings, anybody passes for a villain.
So no, I'm talking about voting, national voting, a referendum. This is a very expensive.
No, I have not even mentioned a referendum, because look at our elections. One of the things that the different observers said is that the level of bribery is so high in this country and nothing is done about it. You're talking about a population which can be given 500 shillings to go and vote for a candidate they don't like, just because they want salt and food for the election. You know, let's make them credible. And for me, it is the commitment for Ugandans to do the right thing. One is the commitment to do the right thing. To say, look, I will not accept a bribe, I will go and vote for a candidate for myself.
Let's listen to a young person, because this story about young people. Okay.
But I think she's not even talking about young people.
No. But I heard.
Even though over 70% of the population is young.
Yes, that's true.
And in the 70s and 80s, young people took it upon themselves to do a job.
Let's get a formula. Because if we have a problem, if you have a problem solver, if you want to be a problem solver, you identify a problem, then you provide a way out of it. Now, if we have a problem and somebody is saying,
she has come up with the methodology.
Yeah, let's get to the methodology. Let's help Ugandans who are watching this program. Let's have it. Let's have a solution. Tell me what the problem is. If the problem is the money, now if the problem is the bribers, they are bribery. If in election the bribery, then there is bribery at LC1, there is bribery at LC3, LC5, at Parliament, at Presidential. Now, if this is the reality, okay, give me a way out.
And that's why I gave two solutions. One, for this process, I said, carry out a national poll in every district where citizens will not feel threatened or intimidated, give their views and let the views of the citizens be binding on every member of parliament. Do it in every district.
Viewers out there, I'm glad that Professor and my brother Solomon have all agreed one thing. For Solomon, democracy is built over a very long time, like 2 centuries or so, like that. And which also goes to, listen, Chief, which also goes to what my Professor Tassis.
No, you can get it in one day.
I hear you.
Get it in one day.
I hear you. But one thing I like, he has agreed that we have not even begun building that democracy. So
I wouldn't think that it's a mistaken statement.
No, it's not a mistaken statement. I'm also saying that it agrees with me that actually the 31 years now, there's nothing to account for it in terms of democracy, because we have not even begun, according to Tassis. And for me, I thought we had begun with those LCs queuing. We went to secret vote. We went to what? But now we are suffering even from democratic reversals. Now, let me make this statement. Elections is part of democracy. But can you have, because that's where leaders are elected and assume responsibility and represent the people in terms of representative democracy. But can there be elections without democracy?
Yes.
Can there be democracy without elections?
Yes.
I think no. Democracy without elections? No. But can there be elections without democracy? Yes. The Uganda version. Because these guys have now invented a new syllabus, the NRM, and their proteges in the region. They have created a new syllabus, how you can be in a multi-party mode, how you can run a single party in a multi-party mode, how you can pretend to be a multi-party dispensation when it is a single-party dictatorship. That's a new syllabus. How does it work? Because of the two things, because of the overbearing influence of the presidency beyond what is allowed by the constitution. For example, the constitution is very clear how you create a district in Uganda. In terms of Minister of Local Government, in terms of resolutions from the sub-counties, from the district to the Minister of Local Government, a commission is put, a committee of inquiry, and so forth. A paper is written for cabinet. Cabinet now brings it to Parliament. It is Parliament to grant a district, not the president. But now you see MPs going to kneel before a president.
No.
To grant them a district. You see people, you see citizens eating rats before a president, to entertain a president like he's watching Man U versus Arsenal. And you see the president also amused.
That is, it is only a parliament that can approve this.
I hear you, but listen, we have seen MPs wanting to commit suicide in Parliament. And the district. I'm just illustrating for you how this imperialistic emperor Museveni, how he has become a Republican monarch.
You know,
okay, how he has assumed powers which he does not hold,
Patrick,
and how he has killed all institutions of restraint. Look at for example, the judiciary. What percentage of the budget, national budget, does the judiciary get? 0.4-0.5%.
You know.
Imagine a whole arm of government.
You know,
the legislature, the judiciary, the executive. So
Patrick,
the government we're running is suffering from elephantiasis.
Patrick,
He's a sick man.
You seem to be impressed.
If you allow me now, if you allow me to put content to what I'm saying.
Professor Tassis, I've given you enough time. I'm going to give him time. You speak one at a time.
I've just tried to qualify in one case where the president has assumed powers that he doesn't have under the constitution, and now everybody has to go to beg him. Or like during elections, the president promised 25 districts in the heat of a campaign. Now, not even the Electoral Commission calls him to order. Even, for example, in the election of 2011, you saw that the rest of the candidates were arranged according to alphabetical order. His name was different, just because they wanted to be the bottom.
Kamara.
You know?
Patrick.
So, when you have an electoral commission...
David, you made a case.
You know, if you reduce the history of Uganda to one man, and you are David Procor, I would think you are right. Can we be convinced that you are right? That you could be right? Or you are trying to create a situation where you transmit hate? Yes, because you see, I have been in government. I have been a minister of local government. And I can tell you that there are some districts I didn't want to be created, but they were created. I know for sure when Kweni district was being created, we were in Imbari, and a team came, and I pleaded, I said, look, we don't have a road down the valley to Kwen. Why don't we first do the road before you can get it? And the president said, Professor Kabweje, let's see what this means. Let's give them a district. Now, I also know how Bushenyi was divided into 5 districts. I was opposed. And we talked. But the people would eat. This time they didn't eat a rat. Now, Museveni, I know for sure, gets pressures. And a decision is made. Right. Now, when you now symbolize, if you say Uganda, the whole of Uganda, Parliament, the judiciary, members of Parliament, everybody, Museveni is their whole adoration. Are you talking about Uganda? Are you talking to us that that's what is Uganda?
The standard
Anytime
is higher because you spent 31 years. Which
let's conclude
Patrick,
yeah.
Procol, we came together in this government in 87.
March 87. March
87.
March 28, yeah.
Yeah. We came together.
From Makere University.
Now, from what you've seen and what you have seen happening, even in your area, in your region, Karamoja region, what has happened there and all that, and what has happened in Uganda as you have seen, you think this is all done by one man? When you are in the government, when you are direct external security, did you have any idea? Or everything came out of his mouth and you only regurgitated? What are we talking about? Just I'm about to conclude.
He did not do anything.
Uganda, for heaven's sake, Uganda is here. 20,000, 1 million years from now, and if something else happens, and the whole world is destroyed.
All right.
So Museveni won't be here.
Okay.
Now let's note, and really note, put everything that is happening in Uganda on Museveni. It will be wrong. And if he's the driver,
if we get
he has driven Uganda from where it was to where it is now. And if anybody has no eyes to see that we have moved the distance,
and I'm saying we are suffering from
democratic
reversals.
And Procol says there is only reversal. No, there is no forward movement
at the moment. Whether in the economy, whether in security, whether in democracy,
including this debate.
Reversals, I'm seeing.
If you don't see this debate even as an advance, if you don't see this debate as an advance, and it is all reverse backward.
No, it's good you've just mentioned that you entered this government together in 1987. All of you coming from Makere University, and Professor Tassis was your professor.
Yes.
So let me ask a simple: if you met again at your alma mater, David, and you met Professor Tassis, would you recognize him in the kind of in the thinking process, or you think he has changed?
Well, in the 1980s, early 80s, of course, you can say democracy had been reduced to a showcase in Parliament, okay? Because then you see the DP MPs just crossing and so forth. You would see Obote asking Semogere to show him his commanders, just like the way Museveni is telling the opposition today, if you are not agreed, you go to the bush. You know, that type of arrogance. We are seeing it. The point I'm making here is that this baby called Uganda, which is now 55 years, which has refused to grow.
Those are centuries.
Now, I hear you. It has refused to grow. It's behaving today like an adolescent or 15 years or something like that. It's not behaving like a 55-year-old. And I'm saying, how come that the actors are different? It is not Amin. It's not Kill Me Quick. It's not Butabika who's in charge of the police or the military police. It is our graduates, lawyers like Kale Kaihura. But the action is almost the same. How come that in time and space, if you say that Amin was Amin, Obote, now Museveni. Now, the point I'm making here is that because of personal interest and parochial and sectarian interest, which also bedeviled the other regimes, they have also matured in this regime, and they are bringing us down again. Even the two valves which were provided for a peaceful democratic transition of power from one government to the next. We watched the term limit taken away. We even know how it was taken away, and how money even exchanged hands, sadly. Now, even the only remaining valve, that one of age, so that Muze can now retire to be the father of the nation, even that one now is threatened. Now it is for consultation over a private member's motion. And now it's owned. But the point I'm making is that even the only remaining valve for Uganda to transit peacefully, so that you don't have to get welding machine to remove a president who's stuck on the chair, to remove him by welding. Now we are being denied the chance.
Okay, you
as a
have made your
country.
point. But I'm going to remind you that in 1996, when President Museveni stood, I think for the first time to be elected, in fact, I'm told you are the man who coined the phrase of Museveni, no change.
At that time, because there was a constitution
and that was
of 2 terms.
If no change politics has a spiritual leader. You are the spiritual leader of the no change politics. You are the one who put it.
I wrongly thought. I wrongly thought.
But you are the one who introduced.
I believe the rhetoric that once the 2 terms. But first of all,
it was that
there were 10 years. From 86 to 96.
Anyway.
That one was a bonus to these Bushmen and their bush war and their, the triangle. Imagine something in a triangle which did not even have an appeal countrywide. But anyway, it's our history. We cannot remove it. Then we now provided 2 terms. And honestly, we believed, we trusted them. We thought they would respect. Now that they have not respected, why should I continue believing them? Like, that's what I want to tell you, Chief.
Okay,
if people...
Let me, David, thank you very much. Let's have Perry briefly before we take a break.
Okay, 2 things. I think for me, the discussion should also focus on the role of the East African community. Because at least when we look at West Africa, there are times when ECOWAS has stood up and said, no, this is how the systems will run in our countries. But for EAC right now, I even hear nothing from the EAC at this point in terms of the different crisis that is going on in different parts of East Africa right now. But secondly, back to Kenya.
The summit is coming here in November.
Yes, back to Kenya. One of the interesting dynamics from their parliament is that they're actually adopting some of the things that we want change. For instance, Solomon. One of the things they're adopting is that even if results are not fully brought in for a presidential candidate, just like ours here, and they think that it will not substantially affect the outcome of the results, just like in our case, it should pass. The other thing they're also saying, which they're adopting from Uganda, is on the issue of not, like, if the outcome, if the irregularities will not affect the outcome, then you go ahead and announce the winner. Because in their current case right now, any irregularity, the courts must make a decision. But for us, it must be substantial enough. And I think that's sad, because in Uganda, that's one of the things we have struggled with, trying to prove magnitude of irregularities. If there's an irregularity, it's a wrong thing. We must be able to address it.
And when you want to prove,
all right, we're going
via the logs of the PVR,
gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'll open the lines so that you two can be a part of this discussion. We'll be right back.
India, they should look.
Kaye Samwiri ndi muvuzi wa mmotoka era nga nvuga loole y'amafuta. Naye bwe mba sinnasimbula loole eyo nsooka nenkebera emipiira, nenkebera amazzi, nenkebera oyiro, nenkebera brakes. Bwe nsangako ekimu nga si kitereevu sisimbula, bamala kukitereeza ne ŋŋenda. Nvugako essaawa 4 oba 4 kitundu, nina okuddamu okuyimirira. Kuba tomanyi essaawa ezo ze mba nvuze nti eyinza okubaako akazibu keefunye. Nenziramu nengicekinga, bw'eba eri bulungi, nensimbula ne ŋŋenda. Nenkubiriza badwayiva bannange ab'emmotoka zino ennene loole babeere beegendereza ku luguudo, nabo bakebere emmotoka zaabwe nga nze bwe nzikebera, obulamu tebugulwa.
This message was brought to you by Viva Energy and NTV Uganda.
Program Guide is brought to you by
Just separate yogurts. You love it.